conspiracy theories about you and the virus. I've seen these things. They're liked or commented on 900,000 times. On YouTube, the top 10 videos that spread lies about you had almost 5 million views. It's also pointed out that according to Signal Labs, which is a media analysis company that tracks this, misinformation about you is the most widespread of all coronavirus falsehoods. So there's a conspiracy theory that one of our viewers asked about. I just want to play that sound.
First, some definitions. Theory: a supposition or a system of ideas intended to explain something, especially one based on general principles independent of the thing to be explained. Example given: Darwin's theory of evolution. Conspiracy: a secret plan by a group to do something unlawful or harmful. Example given: a conspiracy to destroy the government. How many times have you been called a conspiracy theorist? How many times have you heard someone say, or perhaps said yourself, while swiping a hand flippantly through the air, "Oh, that's just a conspiracy theory"? When you take either of those words on their own, they aren't dirty words. If we look at theory, it's one of the core principles of science. In the scientific method, a process that is considered to be one of the building blocks of our scientific understanding of the world around us, we find embedded within it the process or idea of theory. Take this excerpt from livescience.com. Every scientific theory starts as a hypothesis. A scientific hypothesis is a suggested solution for an unexpected occurrence that doesn't fit into a currently accepted scientific theory. In other words, according to the Merriam-Webster dictionary, a hypothesis is an idea that hasn't been proven yet. If enough evidence accumulates to support a hypothesis, it moves on to the next step, known as theory, in the scientific method, and becomes accepted as a valid explanation of a phenomenon. Theories have been part of the process for understanding the world around us since almost the dawn of time. At one point it was theorized and then assumed that the Earth was flat, and the stars and planetary bodies we see in the heavens were part of some sort of dome in the sky that, through the mysterious powers of God, moved like clockwork above our heads. So ingrained was this theory that it became doctrine, and people were tortured by the church when they questioned its validity. Fast forward a few hundred years, and the theory of Earth being a sphere and not at the center of our universe is now generally accepted and supported by science. What was once a hypothesis became a theory which is now considered an accepted truth. There have been countless hypotheses and theories proven and unproven over the years. On December 17, 1903, two brothers at Kitty Hawk in North Carolina put their theory and observations to the test that they could replicate the flight of a bird with the right flyer. Just over 100 years later, and human beings spend, well, at least we used to spend, hours on such machines flying to the farthest reaches of our planet and back. Germ theory is another fine example. The idea that microorganisms, known as pathogens, germs for short, can lead to disease. This theory first got legs in the Middle Ages but wasn't widely accepted until the 1800s when Louis Pasteur and Robert Koch conducted their experiments. Pasteur, the father of pasteurization, showed that the spoilage of liquid was caused by particles in the air rather than the air itself. Koch developed his postulates through working with anthrax, suggesting that disease was caused by a particular organism. An interesting side note here is that the discoverers of SARS-CoV-2, COVID-19, did not believe that it satisfied the modern version of Koch's postulates, and in early 2020, other investigators noted that there was insufficient data to establish a causal relationship between the new virus and the respiratory disease exhibited by the Wuhan patients. Despite these reservations, SARS-CoV-2 has become overwhelmingly accepted as a human pathogen responsible for respiratory-type illness. This information is presented in this article, published on June 3, 2020, by John Hardy, BDS, MSc, PhD, FRCDC. The article goes on to say, this concept is supported by a recent study which concluded that from a statistical perspective, SARS-CoV-2 is no more dangerous or deadly than other coronaviruses. COVID-19 is the infection related to SARS-CoV-2. At present, its identification relies on sophisticated complex laboratory procedures involving reverse transcriptase polymerase chain reactions, RT-PCR. These are prone to errors in sampling, handling, technical procedures, and interpretation. There is no gold standard against which the accuracy of the tests can be assessed. A 25th of March report from the University of Oxford concluded there was no reliable information on which to assess the false positive and false negative rates for the various RT-PCR tests used to identify COVID-19. According to the history books, viruses weren't actually identified until the 1890s. Other theories that started off small and snowballed into paradigm shifts include special and general relativity, quantum theory, statistical mechanics, plate tectonics, the oxygen theory of combustion, and, as mentioned before, evolutionary biology, a theory which, by the way, has many critics even today. Some of these previously accepted scientific understandings that currently meet mass consensus may need to be revised as new theories and information come to the forefront, as is often the case in history. The notion that we are at the pinnacle of human understanding now in the present completely undermines the scientific method itself, which states one must conduct additional experiments based on the accepted hypotheses and new information when it becomes available. So, let's move on to conspiracy. A secret plan by a group to do something unlawful or harmful. If you talk to a detective, you'll discover that a large portion of criminal activity involves conspiracy. Most criminals conduct their crimes in secret, and while many crimes are committed by individuals, many also involve accomplices. Some of the largest heists and robberies were made possible thanks to criminal conspiracy. There are countless instances of conspiracies in recorded history, some so large that they toppled entire governments and/or socio-economic systems. In 1917, a conspiracy against the then Tsar of Russia, Nicholas II, saw a progressive element of the government oust him from power, with him and his family cruelly murdered in the subsequent year by Vladimir Lenin's Bolshevik henchmen. A conspiracy to commit mass genocide in Germany in the 1930s was successful and plunged the world into conflict for 6 years. A conspiracy to create a central banking system in the United States was realized at Jekyll Island Club off the coast of Georgia, where Nelson Aldrich, A. Pyatt Andrew, Henry Davison, Arthur Shelton, Frank Vanderlip, and Paul Warburg met in secret to subvert the US banking system and create the monster that we all know today as the Federal Reserve, which essentially is a privately owned bank that holds the American people hostage through perpetual debt. In G. Edward Griffin's book, The Creature from Jekyll Island, it is revealed that the Federal Reserve is anything but federal, rather a privately owned bank. This subject matter is further explored in the late Aaron Russo's documentary, America, Freedom to Fascism. One major component of a conspiracy is secrecy. Some scoff at the idea that such large and extensive secrets can be kept. However, I'd like to remind you that they often are, and one such example is the Manhattan Project, which was the development of the atomic bomb, not possible without many scientists committing to mass secrecy. Here's a list of other conspiracies that have been since uncovered that at the time were fervently denied. Project Sunshine. The US government stole body parts for radiation experimentation without telling the family members of the deceased. Operation Paperclip. After the Nazi defeat in World War II, many of the top scientists from Nazi Germany were brought into the US and took key positions in the Defense Department and even in the newly formed NASA. The Bohemian Grove. For years it was rumored that high-ranking politicians and members of industry met in the woods north of San Francisco to participate in secret meetings where the aforementioned Manhattan Project was hatched, by the way, and participate in cult-like rituals in front of a large Babylonian idol. Side note, on a trip to this part of the world, 2 friends and I actually drove right through the gates of the Grove and were shortly thereafter interrogated by security. The feeling of dread that went through my stomach as we crossed the threshold is still palpable to me years later. The poisoning of industrial alcohol during Prohibition to stop bootleggers from making moonshine. I recently found out in Australia, by the way, that the government here puts bittering agents in raw milk to stop people from drinking it. I regularly consume raw milk in the US and have absolutely no problem with it, nor has it ever made me ill. MKUltra's mind control. The US government's own declassified files and first-hand witness accounts describe the use of drugs and hypnosis and other methods to program and brainwash unwitting subjects. The Gulf of Tonkin, a false flag attack that pulled the US into the Vietnam War. Weather control technology. For a long time this was denied, but it does in fact exist, and there are Department of Defense documents talking about it. The Tuskegee syphilis study, conducted between 1932 and 1972, that observed the progression of syphilis in black men in rural Alabama who thought they were being given healthcare, but were actually being experimented on. Naraya's tearful testimony about Iraqi soldiers that removed babies from incubators in a Kuwaiti hospital that helped strengthen public support for the First Gulf War turned out to be a fiction. Many people think of fake news as being a relatively recent phenomenon, but as the saying goes, there is nothing new under the sun. A CNN feed was intercepted during the First Gulf War that seems to show anchors faking a gas attack when they were actually recording from a soundstage.
I'd say there's my apologies for that. He's putting on a gas mask.
Woof.
Woof.
Woof. Oh, I love this country so much.
You guys just don't have a clue.
Well, Cheryl, it was almost exactly 2 hours ago when the sirens went off here in Saudi Arabia. Where we are in eastern Saudi Arabia, there was no problem. Now, let me just size my mask and fit it for a second, just like I always do. Stand by, please. Boy, did I almost look stupid. Charles Jaco, CNN, reporting live from Saudi Arabia.
Technology has come a long way since then. The claims of WMDs in Iraq in the lead up to the Second Gulf War, these claims also ended up being false. All of these conspiracy theories, which is what they were called at the time of their occurrence and or subsequent investigation, are actually conspiracy fact. To view these events outside of the accepted paradigm would have earned you a tinfoil hat award, and yet today we have new information to assess them differently. It's no wonder that some skeptical people look at the world today and assume there are many conspiracies occurring right now in front of our very eyes, hiding behind the protection that is afforded by dragging through the dirt anyone who dare question the orthodoxy of the day by calling them a conspiracy theorist. That term has been so sullied in the minds of the masses that it's used as an automatic dismissal of any facts whatsoever. How many more theories that were once considered dubious internet junk will turn out to be paradigm-shifting facts that will redefine our understanding of the world around us?